There's a lot of nonsense about NLP out there. NLP can be totally miraculous. Sometimes you can change grief into acceptance in one session. Sometimes you can cure allergies, change the limiting beliefs, install empowering beliefs, install new strategies.
Can you give a little bit of context to what actually NLP is?
I'd love to clarify it.
Today's guest is Art Giser, creator of Energetic NLP. With over 36 years of experience, Art blends NLP, spiritual principles, energy healing, and intuition development. He's coached Fortune 100 leaders, managed a UCSF research lab, and empowers people to clear energetic blocks and unlock their full potential.
I'm curious if you've seen any kind of themes or why people really push back from that.
One of the reasons people can distance themselves is because unconsciously you're messing with their energy. There's something called inflicting healing. They don't necessarily want it, or sometimes their spirit doesn't want it.
From like a corporate perspective, going into a team, what is the kind of approach and sort of framework you work with?
People on a deep level, they'd rather get along. Nobody wants to work all day with people they hate. Even though they didn't believe it was possible, would love to actually have a great team. And so that would give me a lot of opening to work with them energetically.
What would be kind of something listeners could take away to integrate energetic awareness into their life?
And that's $1 million question. So a couple of things. One is,
welcome back to another episode of Built for This, Stories of a Maverick, the podcast where we explore defining moments, mindset shifts, inner work that shaped how we lead, live, and grow. Today's guest is someone who brings a rare blend of science, spirituality, and soul into everything he does. I'm joined by Art Giser, the creator of Energetic NLP, an intuitive and powerful approach that blends neurolinguistic programming, energy healing, and spiritual development to help people clear blocks, unlock their potential, and create more aligned lives and businesses. So his journey spans over 35 years of transformational work, from managing a medical research lab to receiving 2 empowerments from the Dalai Lama to helping executives, entrepreneurs, and healers from all over the world step into their clarity with grace. In this conversation, we're going to explore how we can kind of move past energetic programming, shift unconscious beliefs, and become more grounded, intentional, and free. So whether you're curious about energy work or deep into your own leadership journey, this is a great episode for you. So welcome, Art.
well, thank you. Thank you for that great introduction. And I love the theme of your podcast. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm excited to dig in with you as well. So I would love to kind of start, to understand a little bit more about your background from kind of medical into kind of the more spiritual, and just learn a little bit more how that kind of those two worlds came to be for you.
Well, for me, ever since I was really young, I was interested in 2 things. And my father was one of the early computer guys, starting in the 50s, which is why we moved to California. So there was a scientist, Art. I remember going to show and tell in school, and they had close-up pictures of Mars, which was a new thing. And I'm showing it to the other kids in 4th grade, and I realized nobody cared but me. It was like, I didn't know the word nerd yet, but that would have fit. And so I loved astronomy and science, but there was also a part of me from really young that was interested in telepathy and ESP and the powers of the unconscious mind. And even in elementary school, I was hypnotizing my friends and cousins. And so in fact, my mom has a great story. I went to the library and I wanted to check out a book on hypnosis, and the librarian wouldn't check it out to me because I was so young. So my mom checked it out for me. And my mom said she gave me that "you're a terrible mother" look. So I always had those 2 streams in me, but I thought they were opposed for a long time, and like, which one should I do? And then I ended up, I got a degree in biology, and I was one of those people, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I thought, well, I might as well apply for a research job. And to my complete amazement, I got one and ended up managing a research lab for the University of California Medical School in San Francisco. When we were studying reproductive endocrinology, so specifically how changes in estrogen and progesterone during pregnancy. They knew what the changes did, but they didn't know how it worked. So we were looking at the mechanism of that. Some of the listeners might be familiar with the idea of cell receptors. We were doing that kind of research, and I was proud of what we were doing. I worked with great people. We had fabulous views up on the hill in San Francisco. That experience where like, I don't belong here. it was supposed to be a temporary job, and then the years were going on. And I had been very, very adventuresome, and somehow I got stuck. And my personal life was fantastic, but I was really stuck in my work. And I was going from the old model of you have to find a career.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything I wanted to spend my life doing. One of my girlfriends at one point said, Art, you're looking for a box to put yourself in. You're not going to find it. You're going to have to build it. You're an unusual person. And I knew it was true when she said it, but when you get fantastic advice, but you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. But also it's going against the norm, right? Of like, well, everybody else is choosing a job. Everybody else has a career.
Right.
I'm kind of going against the grain a little bit. There's like, oh, well, should I? Can I? How does this all work? All of those things sort of come into play.
I mean, now I think I would have gone on ChatGTP and went, seriously, and I would have gotten great advice. But so I just stayed stuck for a long time. And then what happened is I went to a talk on intuition, and they had a table where they were selling all these books on intuition, which will factor into the story a bit later. And the talk wasn't really that good. And they had a break, and I went out in the hallway, and this was the ancient days where we had bulletin boards with flyers. And I'm looking at the flyers, and one said neurolinguistic programming, and it literally felt like a bolt of lightning hit me on top of the head and went straight through my body. I mean, they talk about being hit by the bolt of lightning. It was exactly the experience.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of stunned. And the scientist in me was going, what was that? And the mystic in me was going, well, it was a sign. What do you think it was?
Right.
But so I walk back in and I'm feeling a bit dazed. So I start looking at the books, and all the books are on intuition except for one book. And the one book's on NLP, neurolinguistic programming. So I went, okay, that's just too far out there. So I bought the book, and everything in my life changed. I started studying NLP. Some of the developers of NLP became my mentors, and everything was really magical. And so that's what first got me out of the lab. So that was my first big transition. And friends would go, well, you have this job. They really like you, and you're doing good work in the world. And do you really want to go off on your own? Again, people weren't as entrepreneurial. This was back in the early 80s, or most people weren't. Sometimes you feel that pull. For once in my life, I knew I didn't have to figure this out. I just felt this pull towards it. But then I didn't know what I wanted to do with it.
Kind of define. So I know it's funny. Anytime I brought up NLP, or they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, neurolinguistic programming. They're like, that sounds like some sort of cult, perhaps, that get trained. So can you give a little bit of context to what actually NLP is for anybody listening who's like heard about it, don't know about it?
I want to be clear. There's a lot of nonsense about NLP out there, so I'd love to clarify it. And there's also a lot of people now who are claiming to know NLP who don't have a clue. They've learned some techniques, and they think that that's what NLP is. And as we used to say, NLP is what created the techniques. So NLP, or neurolinguistic programming, was started in California in the 70s. And oddly enough, it was started at the university I went to, but a couple of years after I graduated, which I found ironic.
It was following behind you. You just didn't know it. Yeah.
And when I found out later, I'm going, you're kidding me. I was lost all those years. A couple of years later, I would have been right there. The people who started it, what they wanted to know was that at the time in traditional psychology, people said like a minimum for deep work was 5 years, is what most psychiatrists and psychologists said. And so that was the idea. In fact, there's an old Woody Allen movie where he's talking to his girlfriend and goes, I've only been in therapy for 12 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they didn't help people, but it was a really slow process. And it was based on the idea, if you just knew how you got the way you are, what your mom did and your dad did, and the trauma you had in third grade, that would change your life. And for the most part, it doesn't. There's a saying that understanding is the booby prize of life. And for those of you who aren't Americans, a booby prize is something you, like if you're a kid and somebody's the worst at a contest, you can give them a booby prize. It's sort of a fun way to acknowledge like the worst person in the group.
Yeah.
And what that means is that understanding alone rarely changes things. It can make you feel a little better, like, oh, now I know why I'm the way I am.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change your life, at least not unless you take 5 or 12 years. So the people who started NLP were going, But there are some therapists out there who get really rapid changes with people, that deep, rapid changes that last. So they started studying them and videotaping them, which at the time was videotape machines were like a small refrigerator kind of thing.
Easy to tote around. Yeah.
It was a big deal. And one of them, John Grinder, was a linguist. And part of the field, there's something called transformational linguistics that was started by Chomsky. And it's the idea of like, well, we use these words to describe the real experiences. How do we get what is the real experience? And they went, well, what if we applied this to people's subjective experience, their inner world? What if we could figure out how are they creating the world in their mind? And where is that serving them? And where does that cause problems? You can get 10 people who had the same childhoods, and maybe had terrible childhoods. Some of them that causes them to be successful,
Yep.
others of them it ruins their life. And it's so like what goes on inside of our head is more important than the external experience.
Yeah.
So NLP is really the study of the nature of our subjective experience. That's what it really is. It isn't a bunch of techniques. So they developed this whole system for analyzing that.
Mhm.
And then they started realizing, well, you could use it for therapy, but you could also use it for skills transference. That to find out, like, for any skill, and let me back up, like being a scientist, I thought it was all genetic.
Yep.
Like, oh, if you were good in math, it was, some nurture, but
Yeah.
partially
You have a
genetic.
predisposition to be good at that if your parents are excellent at math. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can't do something, it's because the way that you're thinking about it doesn't work. The structure of your internal reality. I can give a quick story on that. Early on in my NLP career, this woman came to see me, and she goes, and she was a professional photographer, for really high-end professional photography, and she was great. And she goes, but sometimes I get creative block, and and then I'm stuck. And so in NLP we call it modeling out. So I found out, like, how did she think about it, and the way that she would create a photo. If she was given an assignment, she'd go, what's the feeling in the idea I want the viewer to experience? And then she had an incredible photographic memory, and she'd go through her mind until she found a picture that did that. And then she'd change it and make it original. But she had to have the seed picture. And when she had creative block, what she called creative block was she couldn't find the seed picture.
Right.
And so I went to her, I went, well, do you ever just make up the seed picture? And she looked shocked, and she went, can you do that? And I
Yeah.
went, where do you think Picasso saw that in any of his things?
Yeah.
So I taught her, like, how to make up a seed picture. It wasn't that she wasn't capable of it, but the strategy within her internal reality didn't work. So NLP can be totally miraculous. Sometimes you can change grief into acceptance in one session sometimes. And physical, sometimes you can cure allergies, and definitely cure limiting beliefs, and not cure, change the limiting beliefs, and install empowering beliefs, install new strategies. In fact, the most famous person in our field is Tony Robbins. Now, you can like him or hate him, as he says, I dominate people into changing, which is not my style. But I mean, he's helped a ton of people. But the core of his ability to help people came from NLP. When I listen to him, it's funny because a lot of things he says are what our teachers said back in the 80s. But why not? They still
It
work.
works. It works. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the same time for me, and I was teaching NLP, I had private clients, but I was also doing corporate work because people, and I actually wasn't even interested in doing that, but people kept saying, well, could you help our sales team or our leaders? So I started working with major corporations. To my surprise, I really liked it, and I started doing executive coaching. But at the same time, when I was studying NLP, this was in Marin County, north of San Francisco. And Marin County is a place, if you throw a rock, you hit a person into personal development or astrology. It's a very new age kind of area for a lot of people. And so somebody invited me to their house because they were sponsoring a workshop by this psychic named Lynn Martin. And I'd always been interested in that, but I'd only studied it a little bit. And I'd had some pretty amazing experiences, but I really didn't know what to do with it. And he was going to be teaching this workshop on the weekend, but she goes, well, Wednesday night, he and his wife, Stacy, who's also amazing, they're just going to do a free reading for people.
Mm.
And I thought, well, this will be fun,
Yeah.
So I show up, and I show up late, and everybody's already in a circle, and he's got his eyes closed, and people are asking questions one at a time. So I joined the circle. So he hasn't heard me before or seen me, or he didn't have any clues about me. And when people would ask him questions, he would give them answers. And some of the answers didn't sound important to me, but when I would look at the person, you could tell like he nailed it every time.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, well, this is impressive. But if somebody asked a question like, what should I do? A decision question, he'd go, well, it's not for me you have free will. It's not for me to tell you what to do.
Right.
So sometimes I'm a slow study. So when it came to me, I went, I'm studying NLP and I love it. I'm really good at it. And I don't know what I want to do with it. I could do one-on-one work. I could teach it. I could do the corporate work. I'm not sure where to focus. And he does this, well, you have free will. It's not for me to tell you. And then he goes, but there's something else. And he proceeds to tell me my biggest fear that I had never mentioned to anybody ever. And then he goes, well, you don't have to worry about that. And I felt like this weight come off me. So I cleared the deck and I took his workshop over the weekend. And by the end of the weekend, the final thing in the weekend is somebody had to write down a question on a piece of paper, fold it up, and you had to hold it and answer it. So we're all like really nervous and thinking, I don't know how to do this. So I just had to go for it. And then my partner goes, I actually wrote down 2 questions. You answered them in order. And I went, I'm shocked. And then he proceeds to answer my question, and he described what was going on in my life so well that I started using his description. And I'll share it now because it has to do with what we're talking about. He goes, you've been walking down this road, and there's a fork. One fork is science and logic. One fork is the mystical. And you've been walking up the road going, I don't know what fork to take. I don't know what fork to take. And he goes, you've reached the fork, and now you realize there isn't any fork, which was exactly what was going on for me. And so how that fits in, I started combining energy work, healing energy work, because I then studied with all kinds of people, everything from healing to psychic reading and everything. And I realized there were things you could do with energy work that you couldn't do with NLP, and there were things you could do with NLP that were hard to do with energy work. So I started weaving them together, and that was the birth of Energetic NLP, the field I created.
And I'm curious, having sort of the science logical mind. So I actually, not exactly the same as you, but I got to do a remote viewing course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I've always been into that stuff, and I'm super curious by nature, and I was kinda like, well, I don't know, like, I've read enough, I've, like, reached out to, the point we talked to, like, Jill McConaughey, and, like, there's Monroe Institute, and, like, okay, so there's some, like, legitimacy behind this. This doesn't sound like some weird, crazy spy story, and I wanted to see kind of what powers that I may or may not have, because I've always been naturally, I would say, very aware, and I had very vivid dreams. I've definitely been in places I'm like, no, I've seen this all happen before, or like, I know this is gonna go this way. And kind of like you doubt yourself because you're like, do I really know? I don't know. Or am I just being crazy and making
Right.
stuff up? And similar to your closed envelope, we got to do a live remote viewing
Oh, wow.
exercise. And we didn't know anything, but we had to like go into kind of that meditative state and then start to just draw and like
Hmm.
talk about, what we saw, where it was. And then he actually called the person so we could hear it. And I was like, he just passed. He's like, you're like 95% there. Keep going. Don't doubt it.
Wow.
I was like, what? And you're like, I don't know why I'm drawing this tree and I see a water and I see a woman looking out towards this water on a bench and like curly hair and everything
Wow.
on. And like, she's like, yeah, that's it. Or like, and like would confirm everything after. And so I'm curious just kind of around your friend group at that time, or even like sharing what you're experiencing. What was there like hesitancy of kind of wanting to keep it to yourself until you were like really crystal clear? Or were you able to share it with everybody around you and them kind of be supportive of that journey of kind of we'll call it fork in the road, but the realization there is no fork and you can combine?
It's a great question. And let me just say a couple things first that I think will help with it. These are abilities everybody has. It's not everybody's path or interest. One of the things that held me back is I believed when I was younger that you were either born with these abilities or you weren't. And I was afraid to try. And like I said, I was normally very adventuresome, but it was so important to me. I was afraid to try because I was afraid I would learn I wasn't one of those people. So I just want people to know energy work is so much easier than people think it is. It's mainly getting over your blocks to doing it. The other thing is and the people that I teach, I make them promise that they won't tell the truth. And they look at me funny and I go, you don't want to get into spiritual arrogance. When you're reading people, just tell them, this is what I see, this is what I hear, this is what I get. And let go of whether it's true or not. Just go, this is what I get. And then trust them to be able to know what resonates or not, or to be able to confirm it or not.
Yeah.
So when you let go of trying to be right, everything just happens. And that's what was great about when I held the questions or when you did the remote viewing, since you didn't have any clues, the only choice is just to go with whatever pops into your mind.
Just surrender, like, all right, I'm just going to try this out and see what comes up.
Yeah. And then like people go, how do you know this is real? And, after the 1000th time you tell somebody, and I don't mean things like, oh, you had problems with your mother or your father, things that are just, there's no way you could know. Like when Lynn Martin told me my greatest fear, I had never mentioned to anybody. You could ask people their 100 fears and almost nobody would say it. So, I mean, it was just kind of like, okay, that's the odds of him.
Validating point. We're like, yeah, okay, there's something to this. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly because, and since then, and I want people to know too, there are a lot of scientific studies. And this is where it gets into the Maverick thing. For me, there were several times when I did have to confront, like am I going to put myself out? Here people think of me as a logical scientist, and am I going to put myself out as somebody who does energy work and is a psychic, particularly with my corporate work, because my clients were like the world's top pharmaceutical companies, Merrill Lynch, Hitachi, Sony. And I'm thinking, in fact, I was at an NLP conference in the early 90s, and I gave a talk on NLP and psychic development. And it used to be when you Googled me, that was the first thing that came up.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, my corporate clients are going to love that. It's like, oh, we're not going to hire this, So, but when you're talking about with friends, when you develop spiritually and energetically, some people will distance themselves.
Yeah.
And some of them end up coming back and some of them don't. And my primary mentor in executive coaching, the more I got into it, the more he distanced it. And I was like best man at his wedding and everything. And part of the reason though, and I want people to know this who do energy work, is there's something called inflicting a healing. And a lot of us think consciously and unconsciously, we just start healing people. And they don't necessarily want it, either consciously, unconsciously, or sometimes their spirit doesn't want it. So that one of the reasons people can distance themselves is because even unconsciously, you're messing with their energy and they have to go away. So when you learn to not do that, most people, like I think it's part of my family, they respect me and they know I do really good work and stuff, but I'm kind of the weird uncle. But I mean, they enjoy that. But
yeah, of course. Well, it's funny you bring up the distancing piece because I think when you become more in tune, I feel like there's a brighter light that surrounds you, and it can attract the good, it can attract the bad. But in terms of people who are really close, I think it's somewhat combative because some people are really committed, I would say, to suffering. And I was like, you have other choices. Like, why would you want to choose to feel this way if you can make a choice to feel differently? And that alone is just so confronting that the distance, which you talk about, I've had many experiences like that of like, I'm like, interesting. I don't take it personally, but, and then they come kind of back around and ask different questions. And sometimes they stay away, but it is a very interesting, energetic field that causes different things for sure.
You know this, but we're very complex beings. And, the first time I heard about inflicting a healing, I'm going, why would somebody not want a healing? And I didn't understand it, but there's a concept in energetic NLP called whole being permission and alignment. When you align your individual spirit, your individual soul, your conscious mind, all the different parts of your unconscious mind in your body, but you also work with your karma and what are called spiritual agreements, which are agreements your soul has made. And so let's say somebody has a deep belief that they're bad, and the way to be redeemed is to be punished. So unconsciously, they're setting up a lot of punishment in their life, which is incredible. If people are going, that's weird. Oh, it's high percentage of the people in the world are doing it at least somewhat. So if you start consciously or unconsciously healing that, part of them goes, back off. You're going to keep me from being redeemed.
Yeah.
And I always like to point out to people, even Santa Claus, with ho, 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 jolly Santa Claus. But what does he do to the naughty kids?
Mm-hmm.
Not only do they not get a gift, but they get a lump of coal. So they get humiliated.
Yeah.
And they get punished even by Santa Claus. It's so ingrained in societies. So that's one of the reasons I like to combine NLP, because I'll work with people, okay, what are their deep beliefs? Because you can do an energetic healing on somebody, and often either they repel it, like you talk about, or it works, but then they take it apart later.
Yeah.
Not deliberately. And it's because they have deep, deep beliefs. They were bad, or it can come from, if you believe in past lives, it can come from past lives. It can be karmic. So, and all of those things are changeable, but only if you're looking for them.
Yeah. And it's always, an interesting path to go down. And in that remote viewing, I met a woman who's like, we ended up being the only ones who stayed for lunch, and everybody left. And then she just turned around. She's like, oh, by the way, just so you know, I talk to dead people. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And then I was like, that was not on my bingo card today. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more. And she realized she had this gift, and then always challenged it and was like, I don't think this is true. And then her father passed away, and she kept kind of having these moments. She's like, I weren't sure what they were. And then I asked my dad, who had passed away, to prove it, like that this was a real thing. And he's like, okay, I know you haven't talked to your sister in a long time. She's pregnant. She hasn't told anybody. Here's the name that she's thinking about naming it. And like,
Wow.
call her. And this is how you'll know that you have this gift. And like, I am here. I am real. And so she's like, out of like, haven't spoke to my sister in like over a year, call her. And I'm like, hey, before we get into what you haven't spoken in like a long time, I need you to like verify this for me. And she said everything. And her sister just started to bawl crying on the phone.
Wow.
How did you know? Like, it's like, dad told me. She's like, what? Like, and so I think it's just like this fascinating thing of, again, and I ended up setting up a time to do a separate experience with her, and she went into her transcendental meditative state, and like was wild. And she just did things like, you had an experience. There's no way you could have known that. I had like 8 of them. I'm like, how did you? I like, what? I like trying to figure it all out. So I'm curious, you mentioned kind of corporate clients, maybe seeing some headlines and being like, oh, I don't know if we want to maybe attach ourselves to this guy now. But how did you sort of integrate it in a way that worked either for kind of entrepreneurs or sort of these bit larger organizations that are going to say, generally live in the it's black or it's white world, and not so much in the gray mystical, like outside of the box type world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, say I'm working with, top pharmaceutical companies, top high-tech companies. Everything I do is permission-based, but it doesn't necessarily have to be conscious permission, so that you can learn to communicate with them, their soul and their spirit. And, well, a couple of things. One, my belief is if they ended up in one of my groups, it wasn't an accident, But then in my mind, I believe that my spirit's talking to their spirit and going, okay, what permission are you giving me to do? And they were hiring me because I had a reputation of being really good at developing leaders and teams, not to do energy work. And I didn't feel like it was my place to inflict my beliefs on them. But what I would do is I'd just get a read on people, and I'd be working with their energy, but I wouldn't be talking about it. So at the end of meetings, a lot of times people go, that was kind of magical. And
Yeah.
we thought this was going to be harder. But every now and then what was fun is somebody would get me one-on-one and they go, I know what you're doing. And
Not you, yeah.
but again, if the communication back was like, okay, you have permission to do this, not this, or you don't have any permission, then I would always respect that. But It would be. I remember one time I was working for Roche Pharmaceuticals, and they had bought a California, one of the Genentech, which was one of the top biotech companies, one of the first. And Genentech had this Silicon Valley freewheeling thing, and Roche was very Swiss. It's about precision. Everything's about precision. So these two international teams were having a little trouble working with one another. And one of the Swiss women, really great woman, but she had kind of a tiger lady reputation. I mean, she did not suffer fools gladly. And so people were worried about her and stuff. And I did things from NLP. I did a lot of things on a more normal level, but I worked with everybody's energy. And at the end of the day, they're going, we thought it was going to take 6 months to feel like this. And they got each other. And again, some of it was NLP, but a lot of it was, I was working with their energy. And what I found I could tap into is that even when I would work with a team where people hated each other, which occasionally
happens.
Yeah. I mean, one time somebody came in with something called the DMS manuals, which are the legal psychiatric definitions.
You're ready to hit your diagnosis of your teammates. Yeah.
of the boss.
Okay, perfect.
And, and there's things like, it was essentially an incurable condition where somebody's a liar and this and that, which wasn't true, but he actually believed it. But even when people hate each other, people on a deep level, they'd rather get along. I mean, nobody wants to work all day with people they hate. So I would tap into that part of their belief system, the part that, even though they didn't believe it was possible, would love to actually have a great team. And so that would give me a lot of opening to work with them energetically and get them to let go of their beliefs about one another and really start communicating and working with one another. So it was funny because originally I didn't want to do the corporate work. I was kind of was never a true hippie, but I was closer to a hippie than anything else. And when people want me to work with corporations, I'd go, I hate corporations, and particularly the old style,
of course,
corporations, that were all command and control, and women were marginalized, and ethnic groups were marginalized, and it was all about power and do what I say. And then it was pointed out to me, actually by a cousin of mine who psychic tarot reader, and she goes, Art, there's a lot of good people in corporations, and they need your help.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, right. And and the other thing that was fun about it was when I would work with people one-on-one, their lives would change and things would improve, but the sphere of the benefits was relatively small.
Yeah.
When I would work with people in corporations, they'd tell me later, oh, that stuff you taught us, I did it with my church group, or I did it with my family, or, or other group. I realized, oh my God, they spread it more quickly than anybody else if they like it.
I would love to kind of understand a bit more of an example, especially from like a corporate perspective, going into a team and sort of, what would be an example? Like, I know you mentioned like walking to a team where they all don't like each other. Like, what is the kind of approach and sort of framework you work with, and sort of, what was some outcomes of like, whether it's that team or a different team, of what happens when they sort of unknowingly and knowingly kind of participate in sort of those energetic and NLP shifts?
Great question. And so some of it was, on the surface, and some of it was happening energetically. On the surface part, I would interview everybody in the team ahead of time. People trust me, and because I am trustworthy. I mean, I'll tell people what you tell me is confidential, and they get that I mean it. In a work environment, I get very non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always as good with my friends, but you know what I mean? It's like when I'm in work, I really get in that mode, and I'm not judging them. I just want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I would have talked to everybody on the team ahead of time, including, the leaders. And so I would know what everybody was thinking and what they were making up about one another. And sometimes I'd have to keep from laughing because I'd realize they were so missing. 90% of the problems on teams is somebody does something and everybody else makes up in their mind why they did it.
Yes. The story
and they operate
themselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they get in this downward spiral. So let's say, and we're on the same team. So then there's a lot of things I could do, but one of them, every time I give you a suggestion, I might just try to prove my case because I know you're not going to believe me. And you're sitting there thinking, great idea, Art. Well, like, why are you saying all this stuff to me? you know, and so you react off of that, and then I pick up on that, so I start reacting and what I make up around that. So one of the things we would start pointing out to people is what was going on. So we often the really great programs were 3.5 days, which is a lot offsite, but we'd have interviewed everybody ahead of time, and we would coach people at night. But during the day, we first started teaching them ways to communicate well, and start getting them to realize you're making up what everything means. We want to create an environment where you can actually have an honest conversation. And 99% of the time that makes everything 80% better. So we would teach them that, but I would also be working with their energy, and then we take them through experience and we'd manage discussions. A couple of really great examples. So this one team, I knew ahead of time that the director and one of his managers really had a huge conflict. And we did all this work to, like I said, a partner, teach them how to have a safe, difficult conversation. And the director says to the manager, well, the truth is, I think you want my job and I think you're trying to sabotage me. But he didn't say in an attacking way. He just said, like,
This is it. Yeah.
what I think's going on. And then the manager looks shocked and he goes, I feel really bad that you think that. He goes, I'm not trying to sabotage you. I'm not ready for your job. It's just that I don't like you. and then the director goes, because we'd really worked on him, and he goes, oh, is that all it is? And he goes, yeah, I feel really bad that I'm not trying to sabotage you.
Yeah.
I just don't like you. And then the director goes, well, okay, we can work with that.
Yeah.
So then we had this great meeting at the end. They didn't necessarily like each other, but they knew how to work with one another and how to get it. A lot of the work would be how do you bring out the best in other people.
Yeah. You don't
So
have
they
to
had a
like
real
each other. You have to respect each other, though. Yeah.
yeah, and like specifically for each person, how do you bring out the best in them?
Yeah.
So about a year later, I run into one of them, and I go, "How are things going?" And I'll make up two names, John and Jim, and he goes, "Well, we're still not buddies. I mean, we don't go out and have a beer together, but we work together great. Everything's fine. We're happy with one another." Then I run into him a few years later, and he's talking about the other guy like they're buddies. And I went, "Are you guys friends now?" And he looks at me, how like somebody, you go, do you still have a headache? And they look, oh, headache? He looks at me like, what? And then he goes, oh, you wouldn't know. Yeah, we're really good friends now. This is like 5 years later. So, I mean, and that was typical. It would really work. So there was this very practical component of getting people to realize how they were contributing to the problems, what they were making up, teaching them how to communicate well, how to have a difficult conversation, working with their energy and clearing limiting beliefs and clearing old traumas and, things that are getting lit up, like it reminds me of my dad, so I'm like clearing all that
Yeah,
stuff.
there's a lot of those dynamics, and I'm curious because I see this a lot in executive teams, in smaller companies, and even kind of that level below. And this really interesting fear around actually communicating and having an honest conversation about what's going on. And it always seems to be where there's a perceived power dynamic. And like a fear of saying it, but then also them withholding and not being truthful is also making the problem bigger, larger, deeper than it needs to be, and not actually helping anybody who can make the decision because they don't want to speak the truth to somebody. And I'm curious if you've seen any kind of themes or sort of maybe it is a core limiting belief of why people really push back from that.
That's a fantastic question. And that's part of the core of what we work with people. So when I'd be working with leaders, I'd go, your job is to create an environment where it's safe for people to be on it, not to dump and not to be unskillful. We'd be clear with people. This isn't, permission to dump. This isn't permission to be unskillful. So with the leaders, I go, your job is to create a team atmosphere where people discover that it is safe to be honest. I almost did work with Ford years ago. This was a long time ago. This was back in the late 80s when they were totally getting their rear ends kicked by the Japanese. And people who work with Ford would tell me, they'd go, well, if you tell somebody above you something you think is a problem, either they solve it or they get mad at you.
Yeah.
And so people are going, so we don't bring it up.
Mm.
Yeah,
I would
and
rather have somebody get mad at me than not say it. And I always think when like certain, entrepreneurs like, well, I'm not scary. Well, I don't understand why they won't tell me the truth. I'm like, I don't know either. I don't think you're scary, but one person's telling you the truth and 3 people are telling everybody else the truth and not you the truth. So like,
well,
what do you want to do?
so yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. So you're dealing with a whole lifetime. I mean, it's hard to get through childhood without saying something that you wish you hadn't said. It might haunt you the rest of your until you graduate high school. So I mean, most people have had experiences where they said something and it did not work out well. Typically because they're not skillful, or they're not reading the other person.
The tone and the verbiage have lacked a couple of key points. Yeah.
And some people, my belief, also from past lives, are coming in with a lot of fear of, ooh, I'm not doing that again. Let me just tell the king what the problems are, kind of thing. So the other thing is we're social creatures. And it's wired into us that we want approval of the group. When I was young, I used to wonder why, for a lot of groups, the ultimate punishment was to be expelled and, not killed. And it was because, well, if you were expelled, you either somehow miserably managed to live, or you got captured by another group who either enslaved you or ate you or, whatever. So, I mean, even in chimpanzees, it's really wired in that we need the approval of the group. So that's one part of it. And we live in a time, particularly those of us in the West, where you can get rich by being weird. I mean, look at the Kardashians. And but through most of human history, you step out of the box and you got punished. So, and that programming even comes in energetically and ancestrally. And so my ancestry is Eastern European Jewish, and there's all this programming like, don't get noticed, don't get them mad, just try to blend in, because they were like in these peasant groups in different part of Europe. So it was like, at least with outsiders, you want to hide, kind of thing. So, and there's all these expressions: the tall poppy gets cut, the tall nail gets hammered. So it's really wired into us. So one of the things I do with people, I go, it's totally normal to have that fear. And, it's the exceptional people that don't have it. And some of them end up getting in a lot of trouble because they just blurt it out.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we teach them to do it skillfully. But I help people to realize, like, it's normal to have these fears. And if you're a leader, how do you, again, create an atmosphere where people feel safe? And if you're a member of a team, you all have to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first times I worked with a really high-level exec, worked with, like, at the time, the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world, and had one of the really top roles. He was the kind of person you could call up a bank and go, we need $1 billion loan. And they go, okay, when?
Yeah.
I mean, and I had never worked with anybody on that level. And I'd interviewed his team, and we were supposed to have a couple of hours together. And it kept getting delayed. And then when we can finally meet, he goes, and we'd never met before or talked before. And he goes, I'm really sorry, but there's this emergency meeting. I have to go into central London. And so we have 5 minutes. And he goes, I'm really sorry, but... And I remember thinking, okay, I can play this safe or I can take the risk. So here I'm teaching people to be honest. And I thought, a smart business move would be placate him. Integrity business move would be honest with them, even if I only have 5 minutes. Okay, well, the truth is most of your team is afraid of you. And he went, what? I go, most of your team is afraid of you. And he goes, why? And I go, they believe that if they do something wrong, you will fire them. And he goes, who have I fired? I fired one person who was really incompetent.
Yeah.
And I go, I believe you, but they don't know this. And I won't go into all the details, but there were reasons why they believed it.
Yeah.
So, and then I was able to talk to him later, but we hatched a whole plan. So during the team meeting, one of his assignments was to let people know they could honestly say what they thought. Somebody very junior was invited to the meeting to help develop him. And at the end, or not the end, but at one point in the meeting, he goes, occasionally you should have one of us junior people run the meeting because you get a fresh perspective. And everybody goes, and again, I'll just call him, everybody's John. I'll call him John. Joe's, that's a great idea. And I just see everybody else kind of go, oh, he really is open to ideas, even from somebody way below us. So, for leaders, I always tell people, your job is to create an environment where people can be honest with you. And in order to do that, I was working with a team one time, great woman, head of the team, a VP. But at one point in the meeting, people get their buttons pushed, and somebody asked her a question, and she goes, I can't believe you're asking me that question. So the next break, I went, we're trying to create an environment where people can be open and honest, and you just smash somebody for asking a question. And she was great. When we came back from the break, she goes, hey, I need to apologize. And she cleaned it all up. So, but then we also tell the team members, it's also your responsibility, that if somebody gives you feedback you don't want to hear, if you snap at them, you're teaching them they can't be honest. So is that helpful? Or?
Yeah, no, I think so for sure. And I guess, have you ever, on the flip side, met resistance from an entrepreneur or founder that's like, I like that they're scared of me. I want them to be scared of me. And like, they like that dynamic and are not super interested in really fixing it because they're like, I don't really see it, or I don't actually think it's that big of a problem.
Well, because I'm an outside consultant, they have to have wanted me to come in, for one thing. And so now if I was assigned to work with somebody like that, then we'd have a real honest, tough conversation. And he wasn't like that, but I worked with a CEO once who started a financial firm, really entrepreneurial guy. And at one point it was just him and I talking. He goes, well, I know I need to involve my team in decisions so that I get buy-in. And I went, oh, time out. No. I go, if you've hired the right people, if you've kept them informed, the reason to get that is so that you'll get their input, not just to get their buy-in. But with him, it wasn't that he wasn't necessarily open. It was he had that superiority thing that like he didn't need their opinion.
Yeah.
And so, we really had a whole discussion. I go, if you've hired the right people and if you've given them enough information, then you should want their input. Now, you may overrule them. I'm not saying that. If you don't value their opinion, why did you hire them?
Yeah.
And he got it. He was a great guy. So that's the closest to that I've ever gotten.
Yeah. And how would you support somebody maybe who's under that, that CEO or founder who's like, okay, this sounds really interesting and I think we need this. What would be maybe, your advice to them to approach, said entrepreneur or founder to help get their buy-in or openness to bring somebody like you in to help?
So a couple of things. One is sometimes it works to just start with a small group. So that person, if they have a team, it might be more, well, let's work with your team. And when they see the results, then they're more interested. It doesn't always work. I worked with this famous hospital that I won't mention, and that the radiology department and the emergency room people literally hated each other. So we had this, and I was working for a consulting firm at the time, and we agreed to do a pilot program to prove that we could change the culture. We had this amazing meeting. I mean, we had the woman who everybody reported to. We had the heads of each department, and they even included a couple of the secretaries who turned out to be pivotal.
Yeah.
It was a great meeting. And they knew more. One of them particularly knew more about what was going on than anybody. She knew what was causing all the problems. Nobody asked her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had this amazing meeting. I mean, people left there, singing Kumbaya. I mean, not really, but so then the consulting firm I was working with, the head of it talked to the VP who brought us in and goes, so are we going to roll it out now? Because he'd heard these, everybody was thrilled. And he goes, well, no. And Gerald goes to him, well, why not? And he goes, well, because that'll come out of my budget.
Yeah.
And Joe goes, what is it costing you that people hate your hospital? And so they're going to this other famous hospital instead. And he goes, oh, well, those are hidden costs. So that guy was just a creep. I mean, so occasionally you reach people that are self-interested. Sometimes it's pretty hard, if they're really that kind of person. But I don't think there are that many people like that in corporations. I think most people would rather have a good group, would rather things work, But one other time for Merrill Lynch in Southern California, a friend of mine devised this program, and then I took it over, where we trained all the new consultants for Merrill Lynch in Southern California, which is huge. And they had not been doing that well. And through my friend's program, they became top performers.
Yeah.
And then I took it over, and it was really working well. And then the man who had hired us went on to a different company and got replaced. And the guy just canceled the program.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, they had measurable, that it was, it was the metrics,
Yeah.
but it wasn't his deal. So he just wasn't interested. So, I mean, sometimes you run to people that are pretty tough cases, but I don't, maybe I've just been lucky, but those are really the only two times I've run into that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And in terms of kind of, I guess, sort of the practical integration, after somebody does a course or starts to do the work, sort of maybe in its basic form for people to get a little bit more curious or kind of like a takeaway, what would be kind of something listeners could take away to integrate like energetic awareness into their life?
I have a series of 4 videos that are free that really introduce people, and it's more about working with your own energy, but in using it, people will start really, they'll clear unconscious blocks, energetic blocks, karma. I mean, he says modestly, it's a pretty life-changing free program, and gives people a real taste of whether they like this kind of work or not. And if they do, then I have more advanced programs that can help people. But this one's, it's free. It's like just 4 half-hour videos in.
Okay, awesome. And then in terms of kind of, as you look forward or any kind of vision or impact you see, because the world is in a bit of a crazy state right now for a myriad of reasons. But what's kind of your vision in terms of supporting or creating kind of more like energy aware, like leaders and cultures?
One of my clients actually is a member of parliament in the UK, and she was already incredible before she met me, but she's been adding in energy. Something I didn't mention before, some of the people that I've trained who work in like Silicon Valley in particular as either consultants or a part of teams, I've taught them how to do energy work, and it's really simple to make meetings go better. And like one of them, people go, we can tell when you're in the building because things are just different. But one of them, the only time a meeting has gone bad since she started doing this was she was actually rushing to come down to a workshop of mine, so she didn't do it. And she goes, that was the only time we've had a bad meeting. There are really simple things people can do, and they're not controlling people. You can set an energetic environment. It's like if you're having a party, you try to set an environment for people to have fun. You don't try to force them to have fun. So you can set that kind of environment. And because on the inner level, people would rather do good work, they'd rather get along, you can have that blossom. I'll be honest, I forgot what your question was.
Sort of, what is your vision in terms of what you do to kind of support kind of energy aware leaders and create impact within culture? Yeah.
Thank you. Out to leaders more and more. And I do a meditation every Sunday that I lead online that's free, that we do a world healing meditation, and everybody gets an individual healing, because just like you're not remote viewing, remote energy work's one of my specialties, which again, anybody can learn to do. It's not even hard. But I am trying to, I kind of was doing less leadership stuff for a few years. And now I really want to push that again, because the world, whether you like them or not, take like the Democratic leaders, almost all of them can't communicate. I mean, whether you like Donald Trump or not, he knows how to communicate to his people. And the Democrats have almost nobody who can do that. Not alone are they not using energy, they don't even know basic NLP communication skills. So I'm looking at ways that I can empower more. Like my friend in the UK, I totally believe in what she's somebody who believes she was born to help create peace, more peace in the world. So I love empowering her. And I'm very interested in working with more business leaders, but also political leaders who want to get their message out better. Because, I mean, sometimes I listen to people and who I like, they agree with their politics. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's like you could almost not do it worse.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've studied is why Ronald Reagan was so effective. And it's not even difficult, but the Democrats do not get it. Now, Trump has a whole different approach, but he knows how to communicate to his people. And you can't be a leader nowadays on a big stage, either a corporate or political. You have to know how to communicate, and they don't, and it's criminal. I mean, I really think it's criminal because it's a learnable skill.
I agree with you. It seems like generally I would just say it's kind of like those base communication base kind of skill sets that are really, really lacking and is leading to just such like a disconnect and really like sad breakdowns of communities because of it. And I hope that people hear this and that your work continues to kind of domino effect in that way to increase that, because it's definitely needed. In terms of kind of, I guess, one belief or energy shift that you could kind of hope that maybe listeners leave with after hearing kind of everything we've chatted about.
Depending how much time we have, I could either take people through a quick process.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So I want to be clear with people. I love skeptics. Like I say, I was a scientist for years. So this isn't faith healing. If you're interested, go ahead and try this. Not if you're driving. Definitely not if you're driving. I just ask people to be openly skeptical. Just try it. And these techniques, energetic NLP, works best if you bring out your playful inner child. So if the people listening were 5 years old and I said, okay, pretend the room you're in is filling up with sparkling gold energy, they'd giggle and they'd do it because they wouldn't try to do it right. They'd just have fun with it.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to have fun with it and don't overthink it. So if I talk about your spirit, philosophers have, spent centuries about what is your spirit.
Yeah.
Assume that your spirit knows what it is. And I'll use the term your deep inner human wisdom. And your spirit knows what that is. So just pretend you don't have to figure it out. So in energetic NLP, during the processes, you always put your spirit and your deep inner human wisdom in charge. So the role for the conscious mind is set your intentions, give permission to receive the benefits. Because people know that they should have intentions, but just because your intentions doesn't mean your unconscious mind and your energy field will receive the benefits. So you have to give permission to receive. Then you'll give permission for your spirit and wisdom to be in charge. And then my job is to get the energy flowing and just pretend it's happening. And then later you can analyze it. And just so people know, it works on recordings because this, like time and space in the energy world works differently. And I've been doing this for 40 years now, actually. The recordings work if you're just playful with it. So the first thing is we create what's called your miraculous self, and then we'll do the process. Your miraculous self is not your high self. Miraculous self is a unique concept to energetic NLP. And years ago, I realized that people's spirits and their deep inner human wisdom were often not aligned. So your miraculous self is created when they're aligned. Now, what I mean by your spirit, and again, for people, don't analyze this too much, just play with it. What I'm calling your spirit are the higher frequencies of your non-physical self. The higher frequencies of your non-physical self. And when you get into that aspect of yourself, your spirit's kind of like the perfect parent. It's going, well, whatever you want, dear.
Yeah.
You want to have abundance? That's a valid spiritual path. You want to struggle? Well, that's another valid spiritual path. Not because it doesn't care, but it's giving us free will. And it knows that all of the spiritual experiences have some value. Your deep inner human wisdom is very practical, so it can go to your spirit. Oh, by the way, from down here, not all the same. And so first we'll create your miraculous self, and then people will identify some aspect of their life they'd like to enhance. And then we'll go through this process, and it'll all be really easy. Creating your miraculous self is so easy that people will try to make it hard. All you have to do is, right now, anybody listening who wants to, just go, I want my spirit and my deep inner human wisdom to create my miraculous self. And I give 100% permission for that to happen. So any of you that want that, and then you just pretend it's happening. You can bring out the 5-year-old. So give permission for your spirit and your deep inner human wisdom to align to create your miraculous self, and give your miraculous self permission to guide you, nurture you, heal you, and support you, and love you. Guide you, heal you, nurture you, support you, and heal you. And then just imagine that you have one, because you do. It really is that easy. And then pick something, everybody listening, just pick something in your life that you'd like to enhance. You could think in terms of a problem. You could think in terms of an outcome you want. You could think of both. But set your intention. I would like to enhance, or I'd like to heal. It can be physical, mental, spiritual. It can be practical outcomes. And then give 100% permission to receive those benefits. And then add, and this is really important, add the thought or better. That gives your miraculous self permission to do something better than you were thinking of. Then give your miraculous self 100% permission to be in charge. So I'm going to get the energies flowing. Your miraculous self will decide what to do with it. If it wants to dissolve karma, dissolve old limiting beliefs, create empowering beliefs to give you like downloads, clear your chakras. So just imagine right now a whole symphony of energies is coming into your body and energy field, and your miraculous self is figuring out what to do with it to enhance the part of your life you want to enhance. And easy deep breath, smile, and just pretend it's happening. And in particular, give permission to clear beliefs that you're not worthy, you have to struggle, you have to prove, make up for being bad, you're not something enough, it's not possible. Easy deep breaths, just let it happen. And the energy will work wherever your miraculous self wants it to work. Very often it works in the heart chakra, in the solar plexus, base of your spine, but it can work anywhere in your body or energy field. You can clear energy out of your cells and organs and replace it with healing, nurturing energies. It can clear and activate your chakras for more happiness and success. Karma can be cleared. Contracts can be changed. In your energy field, your aura is in you and around you in all directions. And people's energy fields get beat up. So imagine the energy is like healing your energy field, repairing tears and gaps and other kind of problems. Let the energy clear other people's energy that's not helpful out of your space. Not because it's negative or bad, but just because it's not helpful. And let the energy clear old emotional energy from earlier in your life that's not helpful. It doesn't belong in present time. Old hurts and traumas. Let them just gently be cleared out of your body and energy field. And give your miraculous self permission to give you a download. It's a lot like a computer download. Let your miraculous self start downloading into you wisdom and knowledge and concepts, skills, abilities, attitudes, behaviors, emotions, and energies that will allow you to enhance your life easily and naturally. And if you want, set your intention and give permission that tonight and for the next 7 nights, part of the time when you're sleeping, your unconscious mind and your miraculous self will review what you did in this energy session. When it's being reviewed, your miraculous self will infuse it with even more wisdom and knowledge, concepts, skills, abilities, attitudes, behaviors, emotions, and energies from your miraculous self. And that will cause the benefits to become deeper and richer and wider. It'll make the benefits be higher and more multidimensional. And it will cause the benefits while you're sleeping to automatically be integrated into your mind, emotions, body, energy field, and personality. So that while you sleep soundly, deeply, wake up refreshed in the morning, eager to start a new day, the benefits have automatically been integrated into your mind, emotions, body, energy field, and personality. And that can happen easily, naturally, while you sleep soundly, deeply, and wake up feeling refreshed. And let your miraculous self fill you up with more of your essence and supportive energies into your cells, DNA, organs, body systems, your chakras, your energy channels, your energy field. And then it's very, very important, because we've been mixing our energies up. It's very important that you retrieve your energies back and send me my energies back. So ask your miraculous self to retrieve your energies back from me and send me my energies back. I'll do the same. Any energies that come back to you, if your miraculous self doesn't want them, they just go down through your body, through your feet, into the ground, and the earth will transmute them and recycle them. So you're being filled up with your essence and supportive energies. If you're doing anything after this that requires safety, set your intention and give permission that your unconscious mind and your miraculous self will make sure that you're grounded, safe, and alert, grounded, safe, and alert, grounded, safe, and alert. And then lastly, give the earth permission to ground you. And kind of a fun way to do that is let the earth do all the work. Imagine from the heart of the earth, a column of energy comes up near the base of your spine, and give the earth permission to ground only your authentic energy into your body. Ground only your authentic energy into your body. And then that grounding column is like the root of a tree. What your miraculous self wants to release, other people's energies and old emotional energies, old limiting beliefs, are going into the earth to be transmuted. And then Mother Earth, Mother Nature energy is coming up into you. Energies that love you, acknowledge you, heal you, nurture you, and help you manifest a more and more miraculous life. And then let's bring in some nice sparkling energy that wake you back up. You can wiggle your fingers and toes, stomp your feet. It helps to pat your body. You can stretch a little bit. You'll want to drink water later, everybody, because when you do energy work, your body releases chemicals, which is good. And if you drink water, then you wash them through you.
Not bad. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That was great. And I think to close off our chat today, I want to ask you kind of a couple questions. Curious for you, because we just did that exercise, sort of what's your kind of go-to wind down ritual, whether it's in the morning or, end of day, to kind of let everything go, especially if you've been doing a lot of energetic work with people and teams?
Super question. So a real easy one to do. And again, if you imagine that it's simple, it will be. Imagine a magnet out in front of you, because your unconscious mind knows that a magnet can pull things to it. And all you have to do is let go of them. So you imagine a magnet out in front of you. Ask your miraculous self to release into the magnet energies that aren't yours and aren't helpful. So we're not saying negative or positive. Energies that aren't yours and aren't helpful. And old emotional energies of your own that don't belong in present time, old hurts and pains. And you just pretend they're going off to the magnet. And you don't force anything, just whatever goes easily. And then you drop it into the earth, let the earth recycle it. And then you're going to do 3 more magnets, one high above your head, release up into it. And you have chakras above your head too, like a number of them. So you just imagine they're releasing up, and your miraculous self figures that out. Drop that in the earth. A magnet behind you, because a lot of energy literally hides behind our backs.
Yeah.
So you clear the back of your energy field. And then the 4th and last magnet's in the earth. And in particular, it's clearing from the base of your spine through your legs and feet and your whole energy field down into the earth. Then you always want to fill up. And then you ask your miraculous self to fill you up with supportive energies and more of your own essence. And depending on what you want to do, you could ask for energies of relaxation. Or if you do it in the morning, I ask for energies to get me going and make me productive. If it's at night, energies that make it easy to relax and go to sleep. So it's just the 4 magnets, release into them, no effort, fill back up, and you're done.
I love it. And I know you mentioned, the one book that you saw on that table that kind of jumped out early on that kind of was your signal to go towards the NLP route. I'm curious if, which book or kind of tool or teacher was the one that kind of sort of transformed, your personal energy practice.
My energy practice or my NLP, did you say?
A and B or one or the other or both. Yeah.
The NLP book was one called Reframing, but you actually shouldn't start with that. There's an old NLP book called Frogs and the Princes, which I still think is a really good way to start because it really gives you the big structure of NLP, even though it was one of the first. But then, yeah, I would still start with that one, even though it's a classic. It's still foundational. And for energy work, I highly recommend, and he's a really good friend of mine, but we've been coaching and working with each other now since the early 90s, a man named John Friedlander. And he has a number of books. One's called Psychic Psychology. But if you look up John Friedlander on Amazon, any of his books, John's amazing. And I think he has a much deeper understanding of energy work, but he makes it
Like digestible.
yeah, it makes it digestible. But a lot of people do good energy work, but really superficial work, and they just don't know it. And John, man, puts in the whole spiritual foundation, but again, in an easy, digestible way. But his work is really profound. So John Friedlander and Psychic Psychology, if you're into Seth, recentering Seth. I don't know why I'm blanking out, but his other books, but any of his would be good.
Yeah, last question for you. In your own words, what does built for this mean to you?
Well, I like the whole theme of being a maverick, and I didn't get into it too much here, but so like I mentioned the corporate work, when I started like really putting out the energy work, I had a lot of fear. I thought, oh, my corporate clients, and they're like I said already. When you looked me up, the first thing was NLP and psychic phenomena, and I had to just go. I'm tired of completely hiding, and I just have to go for it. And so I love the idea of being a maverick. And how do you? Because we do live in this time where you can be very, very successful and be weird, or different or individual. You have to necessarily jump off the cliff and see if you can fly. I mean, that works for some people, but I really do want to encourage people. Every time I've done that, it's really worked well for me personally, and for the people that I know when they've decided to go, I'm going to put out there what I really think.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you taking all the time to chat with me today and taking us through a practice. That was so lovely. And everybody, stay tuned for what comes next. But thanks so much for coming on Built for This, Art. It was great to meet you.
I loved it. And like I say, I love the theme of your podcast, and I'm honored to be part of it. And I thank everybody for watching.
Thanks so much.